So do I need to seal vinyl tile and rubber flooring? And I would say definitely yes. Vinyl tile, rubber flooring is a very porous material, and it needs to be protected from dirt and debris, from the patterns and colors being worn off, and in order to keep it hygienic. You also want to seal it to lower your maintenance costs. Using a traditional wax will be very expensive, involves lots of stripping and waxing, and your costs will be significant on a vinyl tile or rubber flooring. So definitely you need to seal to protect it and also to lower your maintenance costs. So our CoverShield VS1 is a water-based urethane modified acrylic sealer. It's developed for sealing vinyl tile and rubber flooring. It's a hard-wearing, fast-drying sealer that has good wear resistance, good scuff resistance, and good chemical resistance. And it can be used anywhere where you have the vinyl tile and rubber flooring. In high traffic areas, for example, you might have in a school or educational facility, in a hospital, institutional facility, like in a prison or correction center, assisted living homes. Vinyl tile is everywhere. Rubber flooring, we have sports floors, we have gym floors, so a lot of opportunity to use the VS1 vinyl and rubber floor sealer. The benefits you're going to get, as I say, is a harder wearing, a longer lasting sealer that is easier to maintain than you typically have with a plain acrylic sealers or wax. It's a much harder sealer. The dirt and debris doesn't get trapped into the surface, and it's non-yellowing, and it also has better stain and chemical resistance than a typical VCT and rubber floor sealers that are out there. CoverShield VS1 is better than the retail brands because of the way we formulated it. We're very specific about the polymers that we have in there, and we've also fortified it with a urethane. So we have a very high quality acrylic. One of the latest developments in acrylic is in that VS1 product, and we fortified it with a urethane to give us additional wear resistance, resistance to dirt pickup, and also chemical resistance. So it's a harder product, it's a much more durable product, and that will result in a long-lasting sealer that you won't have to keep stripping and waxing. It will reduce the amount of time or the frequency of stripping and waxing. So that's going to save you cost, it's going to save you time. It's also going to make the floor safer, because stripping and waxing is always a time when a lot of slipping and dangerous situations can occur. So a lot of advantages of using the VS1, but in particular the wear resistance, the labor saving, and also the cost savings. Typical vinyl sealers are acrylic. A lot of times they're softer acrylics because we're trying to achieve a high shine, and they're basically applied and they dry on the floor, and you put multiple layers, 4, 5, 6 layers to get a high sheen. The VS1 is a urethane fortified acrylic. So we're using an acrylic that's fortified with a urethane. We're using a higher percentage of acrylic in the formula, and we're ending up with a much harder sealer on the floor that will provide better protection, have better wear resistance, and also better chemical resistance. Will also make the floor easier to keep clean, and that in turn will lower your costs, make it much the need to strip and wax much less frequent, and also make the whole floor surface safer, because the stripping and waxing application or job is a dangerous time. That's when the floor is wet, that's when it's very slippery. So we're also eliminating that or significantly reducing that hazard as well. Many benefits of the CoverShield VS1. The product itself is a much more durable, much harder wearing floor surface or floor vinyl and rubber floor sealer than it's typically available in a retail store. You know, we've fortified it with urethane that makes it much harder, much chemical resistant, and then we have a higher solid contents as well in the sealer that increases the durability. So you're going to reduce significantly the amount of time and the frequency of having to strip the floor. And in fact, if you combine that with some of our cleaners like our surface treat, we can eliminate the stripping altogether by cleaning and cleansing the surface, the VS1 surface, as opposed to stripping it. So big saving on the floor care costs. It's also much more scuff and mar resistant. Black heel marks, easy to clean off. Because we're not having to strip and wax, it's safer, right? We're not dealing with slippery floors and lots of chemicals. It's a one-part sealer, no odor, or virtually no odor, so very environmentally friendly. It is fast drying, 20 or 30 minutes, so the downtime is significantly reduced. It's for interior, high wear, high traffic applications that you might find in a school, you might find in a hospital, you might find in an airport. These high traffic, high wear areas is an excellent use of an excellent application of the VS1. Provides some good water resistance as well. It won't water white, and it's also resistant to things like hand sanitizers and alcohols. A lot of the store brands out there will be very susceptible to any of that dripping or spilling on the floor. What are the do's and don'ts of using vinyl tile sealers? Well, the first thing is to look at the condition of the floor. Are you going over a new floor if you're going over an existing floor? If there's an existing floor and there's a floor wax or floor finish on that, then you need to strip that floor, strip that off if it's badly worn or beat up or yellow. If it's just a dirt issue, then we have our surface treat product that you can use to clean and cleanse without having to strip the floor. That's one advantage of the CoverTech system, if you like, is we can in some cases eliminate the need to strip. Assuming you do have to strip the floor, then once the floor is stripped, that needs to be rinsed off and allowed to dry or vacked up so that not only the floor is dry, but also the seams between the floor tiles or the floor sections are also dry. So important to be clean and dry. If it's a very porous, very worn surface, then you might want to prime with something like a prime seal, which is a lower cost but faster drying primer that we can put down and even out the floor, give us an even base on which to come off with. Then we can apply the VS1 or a similar sealer. The VS1 is easy to apply. It's a one part, doesn't involve mixing, very low odor. So we can apply that with a flat microfiber mop. That's the best way to do that. The material is poured into a tray or what we call a microfiber bucket, and you dip from that, and then you spread the product out in thin coats, anything from 800 to 1500 square feet per gallon. The VS1 has very high coverage. It goes down in thin coats, and a minimum of 2 coats is required, typically 3 to 4 coats if you're looking for a higher sheen. Each coat will take about 20 to 30 minutes to dry, so it's very fast drying. And once it's dry, you can put a subsequent coat. Once you finish with your 3 or 4 coats, then you should wait about 2 hours before you open it up to heavy traffic or heavy foot traffic. The maintenance of the floor going forward is very easy, using something like the Gloss Clean or the Surface Treat to clean and cleanse that floor without having to strip it. So when using VS1 or when sealing a vinyl tile or rubber floor with our VS1, there's a few don'ts that you want to be clear about. First of all, we don't want to apply the product too thick. It's designed to go in thin coatings and fast drying coatings. So you can put down a thin coat, 800 to 1500 square feet. When it's dry, apply a second and subsequent coats. Don't put it on too heavy. Secondly, make sure that the applicator you're using is clean and it's wet and damp. Don't use a dry applicator to try and spread the product out. You'll end up causing it to gum up. So make sure that the microfiber applicator is damp and wet. Wet it out with clean water and then soak it into the product and then spread it out thin. Okay, they're the main don'ts as far as the application is concerned. Obviously, don't apply on a dirty floor. Don't apply subsequent coats without making sure that the previous surface is clean. So that's a third don't. And as far as the maintenance is concerned, you don't want to be using harsh chemicals. You don't need to use harsh chemicals on the VS1. You don't need to be using high pH. You don't need to be using alcohol type based cleaners. Use water-based neutral cleaners or something like the Surface Treat to clean and cleanse the surface without having to strip it. Why does CoverShield VS1 have a shelf life? Well, let's distinguish between shelf life and pot life. Pot life is how long you have to use the product. Shelf life is how long you can store the product before it's going bad. So in terms of a pot life, because VS1 is a one part, there isn't really a pot life. You can use the product. What you don't use, what's left in the bucket, you can save and use it another time. There's no mixing of chemicals involved. As far as a shelf life is concerned, we say a 12-month shelf life because there is water in the formula. Eventually that water will evaporate and it'll skin over or the VS1 will get thick. So we say it should be stored in a cool place. You don't want to have it frozen though. Don't freeze, but don't store it in a very high temperature area. And then you should get about 12 months of shelf life with the product. What are the things we need to consider when selecting a tile sealant? Well, we need to think about firstly the exposure conditions. Is it high traffic areas, lots of foot traffic, like you might find in a school or in a hospital or in an airport, for example. Then we need to think about chemical exposure, right? What types of chemicals or staining that may occur. You might find, for example, in a school or in a hospital, sanitizer type chemicals. You might find in a restaurant food issues, grease, oil. You might find in a hairdresser, for example, hair dye, things like that. So the exposure conditions are important. The chemicals, the foot traffic, and then also safety as well, safety and maintenance. You want to be able to minimize the amount of stripping and resealing that you do. When you're doing that, you're using chemicals. The floor becomes slippery, so it's dangerous, not only to the people doing the work, but also to pedestrians that may be in the area. And then it's also expensive if you have to keep frequently stripping and reapplying. So these are the things we want to think about: the amount of traffic, the type of chemicals, and the frequency of stripping and reapplication. Now, something like the VS1, we're using a urethane fortified acrylic, so it's a very tough sealer. It's got good chemical resistance, excellent wear and scuff resistance, and that's going to cut down the frequency the need to strip and reapply. And if you're using things like our surface treat, or cleaners like our surface treat, you can virtually eliminate the need to strip. So that's going to cut down your cost. It's going to make the floor much more safe to use, and again, also much more environmentally friendly. What is the best way to apply a vinyl tile sealer or a sealer to rubber floor? Well, first of all, you want to make sure that the surface is prepared correctly. If the floor has an existing finish on it that's beat up, it's worn, it's got dirt, and it's yellow, then you may need to strip that using something like our floor strip HP. You want to strip the floor and then rinse it off, make sure it's neutral, and then we recommend that you prime it. Use a prime sealer. When the floor is stripped, it's very porous, and the porosity can be uneven. So we recommend that you use something like our prime seal to give us an even base. That is very fast drying, 20 minutes, then you can come back with the VS1. That is applied with a flat mop microfiber in thin coats. 3 or 4 thin coats will give you a tough seal, a nice shine, and it's fast drying, no odor. Once it's applied, you're waiting probably 20-30 minutes between each coat, and then once the final coat is applied, you want to wait about 2 hours before you open it up to foot traffic. I just wanted to jump back quickly to the floor prep. If the floor is just dirty, you can use surface treat to clean the floor without having to strip, and then come off directly with the VS1. Okay, so once the final coat of the VS1 is applied, like I say, wait about 2 hours before you open to traffic. Ongoing maintenance, you can use the surface treat again. That product will clean and cleanse without having to strip. Or you can use our Gloss Clean Neutral Cleaner, and that will also clean the floor and maintain the gloss. Don't use harsh chemicals, don't use high pH chemicals, and don't use strong alcohols to clean the floor.